Let me start with mantra. Om Vang me manasi pratishthitam mano me vachi pratishthitam aviravirma edi Vedasyama ani sthaha shrutam me ma prahasihi anena dhitena horatran samdadhami ritam vadishyami satyam vadishyami tanmamavatu tadvaktaramavatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram avatu vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I wanted to read something from Sri Aurobindo on Vedic vision, and Vedic language, which would give us the sense of what we are talking about in the hymns. I will start with this. The Vedic rishis may not have yoked the lightning to their chariots, as they describe in the earthly hymns, nor weighed sun and star, nor materialized all the destructive forces in nature to aid them in massacre and domination. But they had measured and fathomed all the heavens and earths within us. This is a humor of Sri Aurobindo. You can see he is very subtle with the humor. They may not do this, but they definitely did that. But they have measured and fathomed all the heavens and earths within us. They had cast their plummet into the inconscient and the subconscient and the superconscient. They had read the riddle of death and found the secret of immortality. They had sought for and discovered the One and known and worshipped Him in the glories of His light and purity and wisdom and power. The hypothesis on which I shall conduct my own inquiry is that the Veda has a double aspect, and that the two, though closely related, must be kept apart. The rishis arranged the substance of their thought in a system of parallelism, by which the same deities were at once internal and external powers of universal nature, and they managed its expression through a system of double values by which the same language served for their worship in both aspects. This is something to take into account of. So the best way for the rishis to hide their knowledge was to find a total equivalent in nature of the same psychological power. I know it doesn't make totally sense. But the nature with all its powers is nothing but the formulation or expression of that psychological or spiritual force behind. Just think for a second about it. You would immediately understand what it means. Why do we have the sun and moon and stars and light and earth and spinning around and the dawn? What is this dawn about? Or the light and the darkness, the night. What are they really? We are so materialistic, we don't even imagine that they are actually the manifestations of the spiritual power behind. We are so materialistic that we don't even imagine that everything here in this world is nothing but the manifestation of that vision of the divine. We think that night is just because the light, some kind of light which we cannot explain, does not fall onto and doesn't bounce and we don't see. No, there is light, there is infrared, there are different ways of looking at things. We don't see that that's materialistic kind of content in which we live is nothing but the formulation and expression of that consciousness which wants to perceive it in a specific way. So everything here is a symbol of that true spiritual reality behind everything. The mountains, the peaks, what the peaks represent? The peaks represent rising higher. Rising higher, where higher? Why there is higher and lower? Because lower is something closer, it's kind of going heavier, becomes less conscious, and higher becomes more lofty, and higher you're rising to the loftier levels of consciousness from which you can see more. Now look, nature arranged in the same way the psychological value of rising higher and going deeper. This in the same manner as psychological truth there would be in the nature. It will be embodied in everything, in the wind, in the sun, in the rain. Rain is falling from heaven down on earth, and the rain is giving the nourishment to the plants. Plants are growing. Look at this. All these are nothing but symbolic representations of some spiritual reality. So the best way was to hide that spiritual experience, to assign it to nature's phenomenon in the same way. The sun becomes the manifestation of the truth, of fullness of light, the eye of the gods, who sees everything, whose rays pervade the universe, move into the farthest heaven, pervade the universe, remove the darkness. Fire always rises upward, burns everything, offers everything. It's the aspiration from within the nature to reach to heaven. Fire is reaching to heaven. The sun is descending and pervading with his rays. Now, these are the symbolic representations of some spiritual reality which rishis used to describe their experiences. And that's what he says here. So, the powers of universal nature, and they managed its expression through a system of double values by which the same language served for their worship in both aspects, natural and psychological. But the psychological sense predominates and is more pervading, it's more precise, close-knit, and coherent than the physical. The physical is not so important for them, though it totally corresponds, but sometimes we don't see that correspondence. For example, when they choose the Ashva for the power, but the Ashva is the representative of some embodiment of some power, how it runs, the swiftness. Ashva is from root Ashu, to run, to be swift, to be quick. So Ashva is the running one, the swift one, the swiftness of power, which Ashva represents in their symbols. And the cow, the go, represents the light. Why go represents the light? It's a question. The ray of light. How cow can represent the light? Do you have any idea? Do you feel that the cow is the light? No. In the Western tradition, cow is not something very spiritual. In the Indian, it is, yes, cow is beautiful. Even elephants are beautiful. Ladies are compared to elephants. The walk of the lady of the beauty, she walks like an elephant. So if you say it in the West, it would be very, very misunderstood. She walks like an elephant because they never saw the elephants walk. Yeah, if you look from behind, it is very soft. These soft and very beautiful. This kind of how elephant moves. So many things can be understood, but the cow has something essential. It is the milk. The milk which is compared to knowledge. It's a nourishment by knowledge, by purity, by truth, which is nourishing us and giving us force and strength. It becomes the butter. Butter is clarified butter, is the purified mentality, yeah, which can perceive things. So look at these symbols. So not all of them are immediately understood, and that's what he says. But psychological sense predominates, is more pervading than the physical. The Veda is primarily intended to serve for spiritual enlightenment and self-culture. It is therefore this sense which has first to be restored. And now he gives credit to every researcher in the Veda. This is very similar to what Sri Aurobindo would do, and that's what he says. To this task, each of the ancient and modern systems of interpretation brings an indispensable assistance. Sayana and Yaska supply the ritualistic framework of outward symbols and their large store of traditional significances and explanations. The Upanishads give their clue to the psychological and philosophical ideas of the earlier rishis and hand down to us their method of spiritual experience and intuition. European scholarship, which I'm criticizing so much all the time, supplies a critical method of comparative research, yet to be perfected, but capable of immensely increasing the material available and sure eventually to give a scientific certainty and firm intellectual basis which has hitherto been lacking. And it is true. This scientific precision was lacking all the time. There was intuitive thought. But to be precisely like through philological analysis, this was very much lacking. Dayananda has given the clue to the linguistic secret of the rishis and re-emphasized one central idea of the Vedic religion, the idea of the one being with devas expressing in numerous names and forms the many-sidedness of his unity. All the Godheads are nothing but functions of one divine. And that's how they are called. Indra is the one who splits this, Indandra. Soma is the delight, that distilled delight, Ananda, ambrosia, Amritam, which we drink here in this manifestation, sensual delight. Agni is the Agranayati iti Agni. Agni is the leader forward. He is the aspiration which leads our being forward. These are the functions or the faculties of one deity. And we call them gods, but they are not separate gods. They are representatives of the divine in manifestation. And that's what Dayananda Saraswati gives us. With so much help from the intermediate past, we may yet succeed in reconstituting this remoter antiquity and enter by the gate of the Veda into the thoughts and realities of a prehistoric wisdom. I wanted to read to you on the sacrifice, what he says on the sacrifice. Sacrifice is a central idea of the Veda. Everything rotates around the sacrifice. Now, This is the Vedic understanding of the sacrifice. But the true essence of sacrifice is not self-immolation. It is self-giving. Self-giving is the major power of love, actually. When one is loving, one is giving oneself totally. Its object not self-effacement, but self-fulfillment. Self-fulfillment. This is the sacrifice. Its method not self-mortification, but a greater life. Not self-mutilation, but a transformation of our natural human parts into divine members. Not self-torture, but a passage from a lesser satisfaction to a greater ananda. We don't see it this way. We think that sacrifice is something heavy, killing, something giving away, giving up. It's not that. It's self-fulfillment. It's moving from lesser satisfaction to a greater ananda. This is what it is. So, and the final for today quotation before we go to the hymn and finish the hymn to Mitra and Varuna. On Vedic psychology, this we must read. That ascension has already been effected by the ancients, the human forefathers, and the spirits of these great ancestors still assist their offspring. They are still there. For the new dawns repeat the old and lean forward in light to join the dawns of the future. This is how it is said in the Rig Veda, that the dawns, she is Purani Devi, Yuvatih Purani. She is ancient and ever young. Ancient, ever young dawn. She connects the previous dawns with the modern dawns and moves to the dawns of the future. She is that transition of the evolution of consciousness. Kanva, Kutsa, Atri, Kakshivan, Gotama, Shunakshepa have become types of certain spiritual victories and tend to be constantly repeated in the experience of humanity. Now, this is something I have to explain. Each of the rishis, each of the families of the rishis, because these are families, Kanvas or Atris and Gotama and Shunakshepa, these are the specific personalities, Kutsa and Gerasa. They have something very special to offer. Each one of them has a particular relation with particular devata, or the Godhead. Kutsa has relations with Indra. It is his major contribution. Indra takes him into his chariot and brings him to his heaven to show him his kingdom. So it's very similar to Krishna and Arjuna. Yes? Krishna is taking Arjuna into the chariot, in the chariot drives him, and Kutsa is taken by Indra and driven to his heaven. Kakshivan has something to do with Ashwins. All the hymns are dedicated to Ashwins. Atris, they are mainly to of course they have the whole family, there are too many of them, but major to Agni. And Shunakshepa also is a very special hymn of immortality, myth of immortality, which has to be mentioned separately. So if you take any one of them, great rishis such as Vasishtha has something to do, relations with Varuna. He and Varuna have constant ongoing relations. And that's why he is even called Mitra Varuni. He is the child of Mitra and Varuna. And all the major hymns are dedicated to Varuna in Vasishta's seventh mandala. Or if you take for example, um, Parashara Shakti. Parashara Shakti dedicates all his hymns to Agni only. There is no other hymn, only Agni hymns. So each one of these great rishis represents certain particular victory in this evolution of consciousness. And that particular victory becomes typal for us, for humanity. They represent that particular help or the way for humanity to follow. And that's what he says, that these ancestors are still there waiting. They're still there assisting their offspring. Yeah, because this repetition of the dawns have to be followed up. We have to go through these victories as a humanity again and again. And these typical victories, the rishis, the families of rishis represent. This is something amazing to think of, that these rishis are still there. And whenever we are on the path of this particular overcoming or this particular conquest, yeah, we will have their assistance. They will interfere and bring their power and knowledge into our kind of path. The seven sages, the Angirasas, are waiting still and always, ready to chant the word, to rend the cavern, to break the cavern, Vala, to find the lost herds, our hidden illuminations, to recover the hidden sun, the hidden truth within us. Thus the soul is a battlefield, full of helpers and hurters, friends and enemies. All this lives, teems, is personal, is conscious, is active. We create for ourselves by the sacrifice, by the word shining seers. We create. By the word the shining seers we create. Heroes to fight for us. Children of our works. The rishis and the gods find for us our luminous herds. The ribhus, it's another demigods, fashioned by the mind the chariots of the gods and their horses and their shining weapons. Our life is a horse that neighing and galloping bears us onward and upward. Its forces are swift-hoofed steeds. The liberated powers of the mind are wide-winging birds. The mental being, or this soul, is upsoaring swan, or the falcon that breaks out from 100 iron walls and rests from the jealous guardians of felicity, the wine of the Soma. Every shining Godward thought that arises from the secret abysses of the heart is a priest and a creator, and chants a divine hymn of luminous realization and puissant fulfillment. We seek for the shining gold of the truth. We lust after a heavenly treasure. The soul of man is a world full of beings, a kingdom in which armies clash to help or hinder a supreme conquest, a house where the gods are our guests, and which the demons strive to possess. The fullness of its energies and wideness of its being make a seat of sacrifice spread, arranged and purified for a celestial session. Such are some of the principles principal images of the Veda and a very brief and insufficient outline of the teaching of the forefathers. So understood, the Rig Veda ceases to be an obscure, confused, and barbarous hymnal. It becomes a high, aspiring song of humanity. Its chants are episodes of the lyrical epic of the soul in its immortal ascension. This, at least, what more there may be in the Veda of ancient science, lost knowledge, old psychophysical tradition remains yet to be discovered. This is how Sri Aurobindo speaks of the Veda.
Vladimir, where is this? Where can I read it again? Which book or which? Where
It's
can
the Secret of the Veda, page 384.
Oh, okay.
What a passage, yeah? Nearly of the Vedic value, of the Rishi's value. Yes, now we know what we are dealing with. We are not dealing with some gods living on this cloud and trying to help us out here, poor human beings. We are not dealing with some kind of religious worship or sacrificial offerings of the animals or oblation of some kind of ghee to the fire and chanting mantras in the temple. We are not doing that. We are discovering ourselves in our most innermost psychological or spiritual reality. Okay, I'm going back to my hymn, which I have to finish.
This was very beautiful, very nice, very comforting, very enlightening, very full of soft light, as it were. Thank you
Very,
so much, Vladimir.
thank you. That is really, I'm also enjoying it tremendously. Every time I read this, I can't believe it. I can't believe we have such a luminous presence given to us and we don't use it. For some reason we can't see it. We are so blinded by our physical reality that we don't even see what we are. And these are universal realities. You know, the Sri Aurobindo says somewhere that Rig Veda doesn't deal with the individual forms. I will show you this particular where he says this. In the Veda, there is no idea or experience of a personal emanation or incarnation of any of the Vedic gods. When the Rishi speaks of Indra or Agni or Soma in man, they are speaking of the god in his cosmic presence, power or function. It's not individualized, it is cosmic. This is evident from the very language that when they speak of Agni as an immortal in mortals, the immortal light in man, the inner warrior, the guest in human beings. It is the same with the Indra and Soma. The building of the gods in man means a creation of the divine powers. Indra, the power of the light, Soma, the power of the Ananda in the human nature. And this is an important thing that we are not dealing with. As we are dealing later in the post-Vedic literature, we are speaking always personally, individually. Here we speak in the universal terms. I even coined the term for this. The Veda is the psychology of universals. It's not psychology of individual movements. It's psychology of universal movements, applicable to all nature, not only to human beings even. It is applicable to all nature. Okay, so we read some of these verses on Mitra and Varuna. I will run through them once more to give a sense of what it is all about, and you will see now very differently after these quotations what Sri Aurobindo read, what we read from Sri Aurobindo. Uh, Ritenartamapi hitam dhruvam vam, Suryasya yatra vimuchanti ashvan, Dashashata sahatasthuftad ekam, Divanam shreshtham vapusham apashyam. By the truth is veiled the ever-standing truth of yours, of Mitra and Varuna, where they unyoke the horses of the sun. There the 10 hundreds stand still together. The one I have beheld, the greatest of the embodied gods. This is the realization of the supramental consciousness. That one where they unyoke the horses of the sun. Unyoke. They are no more doing the work. They are at home. They are free to run. There 10,000 stood still together as one. That, the most beautiful, I perceived. Tatsuvam Mitra Varunao Mahitvam Irmatas Tushich Ahabhir Duduhre Vishvapin Vathach Svasarasya Dhena Anuvam Ekach Pavir Avavarta. That is the utter vastness of you, O Mitra and Varuna. There the Lord of the movement milks the herds of his stable radiances by the days. Milks the herds of his stable radiances by the days. Lo, you twine swell all the streams of the blissful one, and your one wheel moves in their path. This is what Savitar does. Savitar distills the truth from the highest supramental consciousness and brings it here as Soma. That's why he's Savitar. He is the one who is pressing out the truth and embodies it here. Adharayatam Prithivim utadyam mitra rajana varuna mahobhich vardhayatam oshadhiv pinvatam gach avavrishtim srijatam jiradano. You uphold earth and heaven, O Mitra King and King Varuna. By your greatnesses you increase the growth of earth, you nourish the shining herds of heaven. You pour forth the rain of its waters, O swift in strength. You uphold earth and heaven, our material and our spiritual consciousness and power, O Mitra King and King Varuna, by your greatnesses, because Varuna is the purity and vastness of the divine existence, being, and Mitra is the luminosity and harmony of the divine consciousness. And you both uphold heaven and earth, our physical and our spiritual existence, by your greatnesses. You increase the growths of earth. Definitely you. Who else is here to increase? You nourish the shining herds of heaven. You intensify the consciousness within us. You pour forth the rain of its waters. And the delight of heaven descends in streams into our existence and nourishes everything here. And the consciousness can grow, or swift in strength. You see how many references I give here from Savitri and everywhere. Avam ashvasach suyujo vahantu yatarashmayach upayantu arvak garitasya nirnik anuvartatevam upasindhavav pradivi ksharanti. The transcendent, let horses perfectly yoked with their well-governed reins of light bear you down to us. May you, the divine being and the divine consciousness descend into our consciousness and being. The form of the clarity follows in your coming. The form of the clarity, mental clarity, ghritam, is just ghritam fall, ghritasya nirnik. So the clarity of the mind follows you, the divine purity of existence and consciousness, and luminosity of consciousness. In your coming, and the rivers flow in the front of heaven. The rivers flow in the front of heaven. The rivers, the streams, the currents of the higher consciousness, they nourish all our three deserts here, of desert of our mind, desert of our vital and physical.
Vladimir, go up. I'm writing down. I have last line left.
Sure. Yeah, I will send you the passage, no problem. The whole hymn.
Just 1 minute. You can speak. I'm writing. I'm at the rivers.
Sure. Yeah, the rivers. These are the 7 rivers, 7 sisters. And Varuna is among them. He is their brother. And these 7 currents, what are the 7 currents? It is Sat, Chit, Ananda, Vijnana, Prana, Annam, Manas, Prana, and Annam, or the transcendental, Sat, Chit, Ananda, Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda, Daksha, Amsha, and Surya. These are the 7 streams which are nourishing our consciousness, transcendental ones. And here he speaks in Savitri in a very beautiful way. Rivers poured down of bliss and luminous force. This is what it is. These are the rivers of bliss and luminous force. They pour down into our being. Visits of beauty.
Vladimir, you said
Yes.
7 rivers, and then you said Sat, Chit, Ananda. What were others?
Yeah, there are 7 worlds. Yes, Satchit, Ananda, Vijnana, Manas, Prana, and Annam. This is what we know from the post-Vedic literature. Hinduism is built on this. Yes, Satchitananda is
And
transcendental, and Manas, Prana, and Annam is this world. And in between there is Vijnana, the supermind, which is holding both. But there is a Vedic understanding of the 7 Adityas, yes, of Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, Bhaga, Daksha, Amsha, and Surya. And these represent the Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda, and triple supermind, which creates 7. And these 7 rivers, Sri Aurobindo speaks about 3 rivers which he met in his experience, and this is Ila, Saraswati, and Mahi. And these are the 3 major rivers of the Veda which represent the supermind. Ila represents the revelation of the consciousness, revelation, the vision, drishti. As Saraswati, Mahasaraswati represents the inspiration in the word, hearing. So Mahasaraswati is hearing, Ila is seeing, revelation and inspiration. And Mahi or Bharati or Brihati, she represents the vastness of the divine consciousness. So these 3 rivers are fundamental for the triple supermind. And Sri Aurobindo says that beyond them there are 4 more rivers which are not named even in the Veda, but we know about them. So these 7 rivers are major inspirations for our existence here. They are nourishing all our being, consciousness, power, knowledge. It is them. We are the symbol of their workings here. So here you can see this kind of Vedic beautiful imagery which Sri Aurobindo is using in his Savitri. Rivers poured down of bliss and luminous force. These are the currents which are coming as inspirations to us. Yeah? They're connecting our vibration to the heavenly vibration beyond. They are the when the poets have the inspiration. What is that called in Greek mythology? These are the
Muse, Vladimir.
muses. They are muses. You have to have a muse in order to write the poetry. You cannot write the poetry without the muse. Why? Or you can't do anything. No art can be created without the muse. You must have that connection to the higher consciousness. And it's not just connection, it's an energetic connection. It's an energy which is transmitted constantly. That's how you can make it. You can make your dance, you can make your art, because you have the connection. You can't do it by skills only. Skills are not enough. You need an inspiration. We know it. Those who create, those who are creators, like Rashi or Melissa, those who are working with art, they know that inspiration is essential for this. Without it, you can't really make it. You can't really create something new, something valuable. Visits of beauty, storm sweeps of delight. This is comparing with Maruts. And there stooped the eagles of the omniscient. We have to look into these eagles of the omniscience. These are the imageries of the Veda. Anushrutam amatim vardhad urvim barhir eva yajusha rakshamana namasvanta Dhareta dakshadhi garte Mitra sathe Varuna ila svantah. Is now Ila comes, this river of the revelation, increasing the strength that comes to our ear of knowledge. Shrutam amatim. Guarding by the sacrificial word your wide realms. Wide realms are coming. Barhich. It's this. We have to look into the symbolism of each term to understand the psychological symbols. As if our seat of the sacrifice, because it is the grass, sacrificial grass, bringing obeisance, holding fast to judgment, you take your seat in your home, O Mitra, within the revealings of knowledge. Revealings of knowledge is the Ila. So there are three rivers already here. There is the Sarasvati, which is not mentioned, but Ila is mentioned. And there is Barhis, the vastness, and Aurobindo puts it into the perspective of these three divine supramental inspirations, currents. And here we stopped. We didn't read number 6 and so on. Akravi hasta sukrite paraspa yam trasathe varuna ila svantach. Again, ilaso antach. Rajana kshatram ahreni yamana sahasrasthunam bibhrithach sahadvao. With hands that spare not, protect us of the beyond, for the doer of perfect works, whom you deliver, and he dwells within the revealings of knowledge, kings, free from passion. Together you uphold 1,000-pillared strength. So this is the whole idea of the strength which is with 1,000 pillars, and they are iron pillars covered with gold. So what is this strength? 1,000 is usually the symbol of the infinity, this infinite strength with which holds everything, upholds the, the power and the truth of being in manifestation. There are many more things here which I cannot go through, but maybe here and there I will just mention them. A fit companion of the timeless kings. Sri Aurobindo calls Mitra and Varuna the kings. They are called the kings. Samrat. They are the emperors. A fit companion, that is Ashwapati, was a fit companion of the timeless kings, of these kings, the protectors of the truth. Mitra, Varuna, Aryaman, Bhaga, these are the four guardians of the truth, as Sri Aurobindo calls them. Equaled with the godheads of the living suns, he mixed in the radiant pastimes of the unborn, heard whispers of the player never seen, and listened to his voice that steals the heart and draws it to the breast of God's desire, and felt its honey of felicity flow through his veins like the rivers of paradise, made body a nectar cup of the Absolute. Look how Sri Aurobindo embodies it into his poetry, this Vedic imagery. It's just all Vedic imagery. In sudden moments of revealing flame, in passionate responses half unveiled, he reached the rim of ecstasies unknown. A touch supreme surprised his hurrying heart. The clasp was remembered of the wonderful, and hints leaped down of white beatitudes. Eternity drew close, disguised as love, and laid its hand upon the body of time. It's for the what I found in the Veda and in Sri Aurobindo is complementary texts. And once you study Savitri and look into the Veda, you will find all the inspiration, all the explanations, because these two frameworks or these two systems of knowledge are complementary and they help each other to understand each other. We can't understand Savitri without the Rig Veda. I'm not sure that anybody can, actually. Or we cannot understand Rig Veda, truly speaking, without Savitri. We need Savitri because it is the embodied knowledge of this kind in the poetry and the imagery. We need to understand it in the language we understand directly. This language in Rig Veda is very ancient. The symbols are very ancient, not very clear to us. So we need a help of some kind. That's why I quote Sri Aurobindo parallel way for you to see and for myself to see and feel the depth of that knowledge. And there are many more things you can read for yourself. Hiranyanirnig ayo asya sthuna, vibhrajate divi ashvajaniva, bhadre kshetre nimita tilvileva, sanema madhvo adhigartyasya. In the form of the golden light, iron is its pillar, and shines in heaven as if the swift lightning. In the happy field it is shaped, or in the field of the gleaming. May we win possession of the sweet honey which is in that hole. Now, Rishi doesn't mind that physically these forms do not fit into one imagery. He needs to give us the psychological sense of it. Its form is of golden light, Hiranya Nirnik. Iron is its pillar, and the pillar is of the iron, but it is in the golden light. Doesn't matter that physically it's impossible. It needs to give us the sense, the iron strength and the golden light. Shines in heaven as if the swift lightning. Now, the swift lightning is another quality of this power. It shines in heaven as a swift lightning. First it was in the form of the gold, with the strength of the iron, and now there is another swiftness of the lightning. In the happy field it is shape, or in the field of the gleaming. May we win possession of sweet honey, which is in that home. And then there is a honey there, together with the iron pillar with golden light and the lightning. No problem, because in the experience, the inner experience, it's exactly there. And the Rishi knows it. He sees the fire, he sees the lightning, he sees the strength. He doesn't know how to say about that strength other than the iron pillars, 1,000 iron pillars upholding the truth. And the honey, the swiftness, the sweetness, which is, Mother describes this when you experience that fullness of the truth, it is felt like your mouth is full of honey. It's like sweetness is overwhelming you, like honey is the proper word actually for this. Because in the physical terms, how else would you explain it in the physical body when you experience the spiritual, what is the, and it is felt exactly in the same way.
Have you felt it, Vladimir?
I felt only somewhere, but not in the mouth. Yeah. The mouth full of honey, it means already. Some people speak about that in specific state, the saliva becomes very sweet when you meditate. The tantrics describe this. Yeah, they drink the ambrosia. The saliva becomes sweet in a way. There is some reaction in the body which creates this kind of state of sweetness.
And if you is it when you're not able to hold the state, that would you react meaning you're not able to contain it? For example, you may break into tears.
Yeah,
Is that
definitely.
so?
Vital cannot handle it. Tears is a normal thing. I'm reading this. I'm hardly holding myself not to burst into tears, because the vital, its intensity for the vital is not capable of holding this intensity of the spiritual presence.
So basically, I mean, I want to understand that you can feel moments of this honey filled truth, maybe very slight fractions, but you may not be able to hold it. And that's why, you could, like,
Very
there
true.
could be a reaction or something that follows it, because, and it is through that what follows is you recognize that you had tasted something. Is that, because otherwise how to put it under a comprehensive experience that you can recognize or make sense of, right?
Yeah, if I would be able to hold on to this experience or to this moment, the glimpse which I get, this glimpse lightning comes and then I cannot sustain it because my system is very, very down to earth, very charged with lower forces and so on, and it is not capable of holding onto this illumination. So I'm drawn to it, but I'm not capable of holding onto it. So I'm kind of calling to it, and more it comes, more often it comes, more often, more I'm becoming capable of holding it. So it's just a process. I have to open to it again and again, to this beauty to this intensity. I have to train myself to hold on to this intensity. Mother somewhere even describes that Ramakrishna was going into ecstasy, he was dancing and crying and shouting, and when he had this kind of ecstatic, this is the word used in the Veda, Gambhira Vepa, the one who trembles deeply in ecstasy. Now the whole thing is vital, cannot handle. And Mother speaks about this. She says that we have to train our vital, purify it, in order for it to be able to hold this spiritual intensity. And since Ramakrishna's vital was a little bit self-indulging, he was going into that ecstatic dance and so on, because it is indulging. Vital is indulging the presence of the truth. Starts crying, starts laughing,
He was
shouting.
from theater, Vladimir, so you can give him some benefit. He was a theater performer, right? He was from
Oh no,
theater.
no, I'm not. Oh, I would love to be like him in every way. I'm not saying that.
I know, there's just nothing.
No, no, I'm giving him totally full credit for what he was and what he did for India and me myself. I owe him a lot. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I know the intensity of the which is in the vital. You start crying. You start. You cannot hold it. Also, it's weeping. That means that you're kind of letting it go into some way, so to say, because you can't really hold on to it. But purified vital, totally purified, like a diamond, and then it can hold it and embody it in life, and there is no more needed the self-indulgence. We don't need to indulge in the vital anymore, so to say, to distill it, to spell it out, because this because because we can hold on to it. I'm not capable, so I'm saying that I will be rather crying or something else rather than just holding on to it. But slowly over these years, over the decades, something in me is worked out. And still, if you take me by surprise, I may be very, very moved. We are looking for this beauty, beatitude of the spirit, of the spiritual embodiment. We are opening our inner being, And of course, what else? There must be some reaction. It's great. I like when people react rather than they don't react and feel bored, Oh, sorry, it's so boring what you're saying, yeah. There is another reaction which may happen. It is going into the trance, so into the silent mind, and then we fall kind of asleep because the mind is totally still and quiet. And once our mind is quiet, we know that state only in the sleep state. So we the physical body kind of falls asleep, but something is alert behind, and you can feel that you are like sleeping and something in you is not sleeping, and just listening or diving into it, or kind of floating with it. So, Hiranyarupam Ushaso Viyushtau, and this is the last, I think. Oh no, one more, oh my God. I'm already so late. Hiranyarupam Ushaso Viyushtau, Ayasthunam Udita Suryasya, Arohatho Varuna Mitra Gartam, Atashchakshathe Aditim Ditim Cha. This is profound. To that home whose form is of the gold, whose pillars are of the iron, in the breaking of the dawn, in the uprising of the sun, you ascend, O Varuna, O Mitra, and thence you behold the infinite and the finite. There is a place, the throne from which we can see both the transcendental and this world. We can see the Aditi and Diti. We can see the Divine Mother as an infinite consciousness and the finite deity. So this is the supramental place. From the supermind you see both. So the Mitra and Varuna coming down into the sacrifice, they want through the human beings invoking them here to rise to the supramental consciousness and bring the human being to that level from which humans can see both the transcendental Satchitananda and this world of Manas, Prana and Annam together. This is the realization of the future. I will stop here for today, and we will continue next time. So you wanted to study the Vedas? This is the Vedas. Yeah? This is the grand Veda, which is going far beyond any Upanishadic or any philosophical treatises. It's more a beauty of poetry and direct appeal to our consciousness. It's not an explanation. It's rather the action upon us. It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't want to justify its own theory or its own philosophy or its own vision. It has it already. It just speaks about it. It activates it within our consciousness. Okay, I stop here, and if you have some questions or need some clarifications or want to share, please go ahead.
We spoke about how purified. So, what happens if when the vital is ready?
What happens when the vital is ready? To make vital ready, you need to do a lot of work. I mean, really.
Thank you, Vladimir. Look at the loaded lot of work. Vladimir, please make it simple. Give us 5 points.
I mean.
Yes, 5 points to.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, 5 points.
Say it. We don't hear you. 5 points. That's what you said. 5 points. First of all, you have to have a connection with that which will purify the vital. So you have to invite the force from above. It has to descend into your mind, purify your mind, make it a firm instrument of the divine, luminous, full of the gharitam, the clarified butter. It has to become like clarified butter, full of heat, clarity, golden, and oily, fluid, easy going in every direction. You can hold on to any. You have to have such a power of concentration which would create such a mind. And that mind can be created only with a presence from above, with a greater force, which actually Vedas are invoking constantly. And you can feel it in yourself. Something descends upon you. And to that you have to open all your being. And then that has to come and purify the vital over some time. And then once vital is purified by that force, by the rain of heaven, by those streams of inspiration coming down the muses. Muses are purifying, making vital more and more receptive of beauty and truth. When the vital will refuse to follow its own lower desires and will long for the truth and beatitude in the being, that is already the sign of the purity of the vital. But I'm speaking about the descent of above. There is also psychic from within. And when the psychic from the heart reaches to the vital and purifies it, vital becomes a proper instrument of the divine. It loves the beauty. It wants the power, the pure power, the true power of the divine, and not its own egoistic enjoyment. Then it is purified, or on the way to be purified. So the sincerity, humility, these are the best ways. Gratitude, aspiration, receptivity, courage. These are the forces which purify the vital. Generosity, equality, equanimity, peace. These are the qualities which Rashi knows very well because she was playing them out in the theater with our university students. Yes. Is it not purifying the vital, Rashi? These qualities? To be
That
sincere?
it is, but there is so much, so much, so much more. It's like, you know, you work all the time, all days, yet there is just so much. And there are those points when you just kind of fall back into, okay, I shall watch a movie, give me a pizza. You know, it's just constant. Oh, it's
Yeah,
what a
pizza is important and movie also. Because there is a part in us which cannot really handle it. It wants to come back to its own kind of stable. It likes to be back to its own desires, small desires like pizzas, videos, films, whatever. Parties, dancing, happiness, silliness. Because then when you are silly, you are free. You are free in that vital expression, and you can be yourself, say stupid things, don't want to be judged, you want to be simply. And what does it mean? So it means that one part of you wants to be what it is. It doesn't want to be something which is not some higher beatitude. That's the problem of purification. And we are open to all kinds of influences.
also in this world, when we are like, for example, when you're in this when you create a work of heightened purity or beauty, you know, or the if you are embodying for certain time that sense, then people just think you're mad. Like nobody, like very few people get it, whether it's your product or whether it's you. It's like, you know, it's like you're all the time surrounded by people who don't get it. So it's
Yeah,
also sometimes just equally tiresome to
yeah.
continue for this you know, higher level of a need for truth and beauty through whatever you do, you know, that ultimate sense of ultimate truth. But it's very difficult to communicate it amidst people, and it may touch them, but it will not descend in their mind or their beingness. They don't know what happened to them, so there is no further sort of conversation or dialogue or it's just like, I think what we do as artists is just plant a seed, because we have no idea
Mm-hmm.
you know, what is going to grow when. And this idealistic hopelessly hope that you have, you keep continuing to do that, and it's so tiresome sometimes, you know.
But it does its work, as you say, planting the seed. You cannot see continuation of it immediately or realization, but that moment which the truth touched the being will stay in the memory for a long time, and it will pop up somewhere later, and when they will be dying, leaving the body, they will remember that moment and not anything else in between. So it is really worth doing.
Thanks for encouragement, Vladimir.
Right.
The cracking of the seed could pay the bills. Yes, of course.
Yes, it would pay the bill. Well, I don't know about bills. I am not sure, but bills are built on totally different force. Unfortunately, money is not following this beatitude and this spiritual path yet. It follows desires and silliness and the lower kind of living. The lower you go, the better.
I guess 2020 and pandemic is kind of erasing the gaps and kind of bringing it together.
Could
This
be.
this whole disparity between spiritual and lower earthly life, material life. And I think all of us need to contribute, because when very wise and knowledgeable and spiritually evolved people withdraw from the society, they do a huge damage. Because if they could bring material wealth into light, then they will become the examples that everybody could follow, instead of it being in the wrong hands and they becoming leading the low, all the inconscient people. So it's such a responsibility for every I think seeker and everyone on the path to really, really exert their earthly presence for the rest of the people to witness that that also is a path, that that also can feed you, that also brings you to whatever you may need in the world. I mean, that's what I feel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is happening. You can see here and there. You can see like Mark Zuckerberg gave away 500, I don't remember, billion or million uh, dollars away because his daughter was born. So he was so happy to give it for donations. Yeah, so 99% or something he left, or 5% he left, or 1% of his income he left for himself. He gave all he had. Yeah. Well, that 1% was like 50 million or something dollars, but and he became rich again in 1 year because Facebook makes so much money. Still, and this is something. These are the glimpses of the future. Yeah, they are already kind of penetrating. They're coming once in a while. People feel like, what am I doing? What for? I have these kind of billions in the bank. Bank is using it for its own. So what's the point? Yeah, doesn't make any sense. So people are looking for real fulfillment which is spiritual, and it cannot be done by money. It has to be done by the spirit. Great. Okay, I'm closing with mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaham Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.